Hey everyone, and welcome to a guide for Star Renegades. This time we're going to be looking at some of the basics of the game, so let's get started. Star Renegades is a roguelite RPG with a bunch of cool features that make the gameplay and combat very satisfying. You'll get brief tutorials on the mechanics of the game as you uncover them, but it will take a little while to get the hang of them. The combat system is round based, where each round of attacks happens on a timeline representing 60 seconds. But you have as long as you need to decide what moves you're going to use, so there's no need to rush your decisions. Each move takes a certain amount of time to use, which places it somewhere on the timeline, and if you attack an enemy before they've used their move, you'll crit them, adding extra damage and a bonus effect depending on the move. This also works the other way around, and enemies can crit you. Most enemies can have their moves pushed back if you crit them, and if they're pushed back past the end of the timeline, they'll break and won't be able to use their move this round. Usually, an enemy can only be pushed back a certain number of times, which is shown as a number next to their move on the timeline, and if they get broken, they generally can't be broken again in the next round, so you can't endlessly delay an enemy's attack. Not all attacks can push back enemies, so choose your moves carefully. Once you've selected a move, you can't back out of it, but you can cycle through your party members before picking moves, which gives you a chance to work out what moves you want each of your characters to use before committing to them. A lot of the combat is focused on breaking enemies whenever possible, as it reduces the amount of damage you'll take. However, you won't always be able to break every enemy, so you have to be prepared to take a few hits. At any point during a round, you can inspect every unit to see how much health, armor and shields they have, what move they'll be using, who they're targeting, and how much damage it will do. You should use this every round, as it helps decide which targets you need to focus on. When you're unable to break an enemy, it's often best to try and mitigate the damage you'll take by defending with the character that's being targeted. If an enemy can't be broken and is using an AoE attack, again, it's best to see how much damage it's going to do, and if it's enough to break your shields on any character, then it's a good idea to defend with them, even if it means you're defending with every character for a turn. For longer fights, keeping your health up is important, as your shields can easily be restored mid-fight by several characters, but health is more difficult to restore. One of the ways of restoring health is through setting up camp at night. Every character has cards they can use while camping to help allies. Some of these restore health, others provide temporary buffs that tend to last the next 2 fights, and all of them will improve the relationship between the character using the card and the character it's used on. Each card has a point cost, and you can spend up to 5 points each night, so choose your cards carefully. Each time you defeat a boss or mini-boss, you'll receive a card that costs 0 points and improves the relationship between 2 of your party members. There's no point in saving these, so just use them the next time you set up camp. When the relationship between 2 characters hits a milestone at every 25 points, you'll get a little bit of dialogue between the 2 and receive some sort of buff depending on their classes. Every planet has various bosses and loot scattered around, so before you make any moves, it's best to try and figure out what path you'll take over the 3 days you're there so you can maximise the amount of XP, bosses and loot you'll get. You can't predict which zones will become inaccessible after every turn, so your plan may not go perfectly, but you should still be able to get most of the loot you set out to. That covers the general gameplay, which takes up the majority of the game, but there's still the roguelite part to cover. When your party dies, or you choose to abandon mission, you'll be teleported to a base camp before moving on to the next dimension and starting again. At this camp, you'll get progress towards certain unlocks depending on how well you've done in this run, giving you new traits for your characters amongst other things. You'll be able to spend the intel that you've received from every time you beat a boss, using it to unlock new characters for your future runs. You'll also be able to spend any tech you've got, which builds up when you damage and defeat enemies. It can be used to buy passive buffs for your party, or to unlock weapons so they have a chance of appearing in loot crates. After you've bought everything you want to, head to the teleporter and on to the next dimension. At the start of each dimension, you'll be able to pick a party of 3 from the classes that you've unlocked. This gives you a chance to experiment with different combinations and new classes until you find what works best for you. That's everything for this time. I hope you found it useful. I really recommend checking this game out. I've had a lot of fun with it so far, and it's definitely got a lot more to offer. Keep an eye out for more tips and guides in the future, but until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.